Hey everyone, welcome back to another video on the Manual Theory channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at this 1994 E320 Coupe, also known as the 124 chassis, or C124 if you want to be specific. We're going to take a look at this particular car, go into what it needs, how it could be cleaned up, and what kind of potential it has. So this particular one is a 1994. So the 124 chassis ran in general from 1986 to 1995, which puts this at the second to last year of production. This is the final facelift that the car received. So you can see there's a few changes. Obviously the headlights are a little bit different from the pre-facelift models. You've got these more clear corner lights versus the solid amber. The grille is different. So on a pre-facelift, the hood ornament is actually part of the grille. On the facelift cars, they are separate. And there's a few other changes made to the interior as well. But overall, the 124 retained that same boxy shape throughout its entire life cycle. And that's not a bad thing. I really do think this is one of the best looking cars ever. Now the 124 also has a legendary reputation for durability and reliability. So it came after the 123, which if you've ever heard of million-mile Mercedeses, it's usually a 123, specifically a 123 diesel. So it was really not an easy task to succeed the 123 with this car, but somehow Mercedes managed to do it. To many aficionados, this is the best built Mercedes of all time. And if you ask me personally, the 124 chassis is the best car of all time, period. So most 124s tend to be sedans. This one is a coupe, which is a bit more rare, at least here in the US. There are also wagons. Wagons are quite rare as well, and they tend to fetch a pretty high price premium, as do the coupes. The sedans tend to have the lowest value. Now, as far as the 124 goes, this is really where the era where Mercedes has started getting much more modern. If you look at a 123, it's kind of really a glorified tractor. You know, I'm gonna get some hate for that, but they really are they're very sturdy cars, but they're also pretty primitive by modern standards. A 124, even by modern standards, is still a pretty, you know, in the sense of the way it was constructed and certain touches that I'll show you in a sec, it really is still pretty modern. So if you compare 123 to a 124, for example, you'll see all these window seals and all the aerodynamics of the car. Everything is flush. If you look at the windows, again, everything is flush. And this is just part of a general push towards improving aerodynamics on this car and this car's sister car, which is the 190E. So if you look at the hood, for example, you'll see this taper up towards the end. This is to kick the air up over the windshield instead of hitting the windshield. These cars are also famous for their mono wiper. You'll notice there's only one wiper. Again, aerodynamics, and also it covers more of the windshield than a traditional two wiper system. So it actually articulates as it comes up to the center, it actually sticks out more. But overall, if you compare this car in 1986 to the kind of cars that you would get on the market, it looked like a spaceship in comparison. It really did. This particular car is finished in a really nice navy blue over a beige interior. This navy blue, being a darker color, has started to oxidize a little bit. You know, you're starting to lose a little bit of the clear coat up on the roof, but this is pretty standard stuff. Otherwise, the paint is actually in really nice shape. It's still got a lot of gloss left to it. And in general, the body of this car is really, really straight. I don't see any dings or dents. Honestly, I'm trying to look for door dings along the side here, and I really don't see any. Moving around the back, again, same story. Car is in great shape. I really don't see any major damage. You've got a tiny little bit of oxidation happening there, but otherwise, this is a really, really clean, unmolested survivor. Like, you can tell this car has been in California for a long time, if not its entire life. So we'll start off back here with the trunk. Go ahead and just push this little button down here. Got yourself a pretty big trunk for a coupe. And as you'll notice once we start moving inside this car, it is super clean. I mean, just looking at the carpets, the interior in general, and as I'll show you the leather, it is extremely clean in here. This is a really, really well-kept car. One area you want to look for rust in a 124 and just older Mercedeses in general, you tend to get a little bit of rust here. I see it all the time on 126s, especially right here. What ends up happening is water just pools up here, and especially if you have leaves and dirt and other debris down here, it gets clogged up, it retains moisture, and then slowly this area starts to rust over time. As you can see on this car, there is zero rust. Another thing you can look for on these cars that tells you how long it's been sitting in the sun is this third brake light. So usually, because of their exposure high up in the window, they tend to crack and get really brittle. Or at the very least, they tend to get discolored. This one is still the original beige, which is really nice to see. You also generally want to look at the parcel shelf back here. If, for instance, I'll show you a picture in my 190. That interior is black, so it shows a bit more, but this whole parcel shelf has faded and turned brown in my car. In this car, it's still the original color. So that lets you know that this car definitely was garaged at some point. Check the fuel cap. Everything looks clean and original. Again, sometimes you can get some rust trapped in here. I don't see anything of the kind with this car. This car just needs a good cleanup, but otherwise it's in really, really nice shape. I really do think the 124 actually aged better than its successor, which is the 210. This to me, it's such a timeless design. You've got, of course, your classic headlight wipers, requisite on any 80s Mercedes. So taking a look under the hood, what you'll find here is an M104, which is a 3.2 liter straight six. So this replaced the M103, which was also used in the same car in earlier years. The M103 was a great engine, very durable, very smooth, but a little bit down on power. I believe they made around 178 horsepower. This makes around 220. These also did introduce variable valve timing, which is one way that Mercedes kept that low-end torque of the 103, but also added in much better top-end power and response. 104s are pretty bulletproof in general. The major issue that is kind of known with 124s of this era, specifically the later cars, so that would include this facelift model, is the biodegradable wiring harness. If you've ever heard anybody talking about these, you've probably heard that term before. Basically, Mercedes used a material for the wiring harness that started to degrade a little bit too soon. It was really meant to just degrade after the car had reached the end of its useful life, but unfortunately that did not end up being the case. There are two harnesses, there's an upper one and a lower one. I've heard people say in general, if the car has made it this far, chances are it's had the wiring harness replaced. Overall, taking a look at this engine bay, it's super clean. There's a little bit of pitting on the valve cover, but otherwise, this looks like an honest, clean survivor. M104s and M103s, I think, actually can sometimes start to develop a little bit of a head gasket leak on cylinder 6 in the back corner. I don't see anything on this car. But overall, it just looks very, very original in here. Taking a look at this front structure, I don't see any markings, I don't see any pen markings, I don't see any crumpling or any evidence of an impact. So it definitely looks like this car was never in a front-end collision. One other telltale sign that you can look at for one of these old Mercedes is to also look at the hood pad. The hood pad on this car is still intact. Many of these old Mercedeses you'll get into, the hood pad is just completely gone. You'll see, bits of glue left over and like little chunks of pad. This one still looks pristine. Making our way around this side of the engine, you can see that it does have ABS. Mercedes was one of the first pioneers actually to use ABS in their cars. It is actually a pretty good system. Even by modern standards, it works pretty well. You can see they were starting to experiment with these plastic intake manifolds, but I'm sure they knew what they were doing. Everything in here looks very easy to service. These are just easy, straightforward cars to work on. You also don't have the pain of having the Bosch CIS Cagetronic system that you would have found on an M103. That is basically electronically controlled mechanical fuel injection, which is a nightmare, just as it sounds. So this car goes to electronic fuel injection, which makes maintenance and repairs much, much simpler. In general, getting a car to run well with Cagetronic was a little bit of black magic that most mechanics don't want to do today. This car would be much, much easier to service yourself or to find somebody willing to work on it. So now let's take a look at the interior of this car, starting off with the passenger side. You can see, being the coupe, it does have frameless windows, which is always nice. One thing I noticed right off the bat was the quality of the leather. You can see that clearly the interior of this car was either redone at some point or was just kept in exceptional condition. There is absolutely zero wear on these bolsters. The bolsters look fantastic. Honestly, I'm kind of jealous that my 190 seats don't look like this. This interior really does look incredible. Looking a little bit closer, you can see the dash completely crack-free. Again, another pretty rare thing on these older Mercedeses. Nothing on the dash, looks perfect. The wood starting to show some signs of wear in the center console here, but that is totally normal. You can get that relaminated. It's got the original Mercedes-Benz radio. Always really cool to see. In general, usually these armrests tend to have a lot of wear and cracking on them. This one is perfect. Carpets all look good. One thing I've always loved about these 124 interiors is this kind of bunched leather effect that you get on the door. On the more base cars that have MB techs, you don't get this. You get a traditional vinyl insert here. But to me, this bunched leather looks fantastic. You also get burled walnut trim, with this being a coupe. Usually on the lower spec sedans, you would get a zebrano wood instead. Of course, it wouldn't be part of a 124 review if you didn't get to listen to the thunk of the doors closing. You can see the wheel, actually in amazing shape considering the mileage. This one does have 139,000 miles, but you wouldn't really be able to tell from the interior. Steering wheel leather looks great. I don't see any marks or any rips. The driver's seat obviously does have a little bit more wear than the passenger seat, but considering the age and the mileage, not bad at all. These little cracks right here could easily be refilled by any upholstery shop. You can see that some kind of previous repair has been attempted on the driver's bolster, but given the rest of the interior, you can see this being a later 124 model, it does have a passenger side airbag, and of course that's in addition to the driver's side one that's been standard. This did take up the space of the glove box, however. The earlier cars did not have this airbag here, and so their glove box was here. This car does not have a glove box here, so Mercedes instead just gave you a lockable center console right here. So it's actually a multi-stage cubby here. You've got a little one, and then down here you've got another one. This one has a nice little, again, burled walnut insert that pulls out and closes to cover up your stuff. You can see these cars do all come with a 4-speed automatic. There are certain 124 models that you could get with a manual, but I believe in the US you could not get any of them as coupes, which was a little bit disappointing, to be honest. To me, the ideal 124 would have been a 6-cylinder coupe with the manual transmission. You could row your own gears, enjoy the pillarless nature of the coupe, but unfortunately that is left to the aftermarket. You've got a little bit more storage down here with, of course, your ashtray. This was the 80s. And the indecipherable Mercedes climate system. I've had my 190 for 5 years and I still don't understand fully how it works. Anybody who tells you otherwise is probably lying. These vents are in pretty good shape for the year. Usually if you go to any junkyard, any car that you'll see there, these are completely destroyed. The rearview mirror does have this bezel here that does need to be replaced, but you can find these, they're a dime a dozen at a junkyard. One fun quirk about 124s and other Mercedes of this era is they do have this little third visor here. So that way you've got coverage here, got coverage on this side, and you've also got coverage in the middle for this tiny little spot where the sun can sneak up into your eyes. All 124s in the US came with a nice big sunroof. These are actually very large sunroofs, even by modern standards. Now, being a coupe, the back seat is definitely a little bit cramped, but it is still totally usable by shorter adults or definitely children. Again, it looks like these rear seats are in fantastic condition. You do have rear headrests, which is always cool to see. I believe those can be deployed. There's a button right here on the console. You can actually flip those up and down, which is pretty fun if you have people in the back. Otherwise, not too much to see back here. It's not like a modern car where you have screens and entertainment systems. You've got seats. You've got this really nice, again, burled walnut center console for your storage. And that's about it. And the materials in here all still feel nice. If you compare an 80s Mercedes to a new Mercedes, obviously, you know, the leather is more opulent in the newer cars, the wood is a bit shinier, so on, but the sense of quality in here really cannot be beat. Also want to take a quick look at the instrument cluster. I do miss the days where you still had an oil pressure gauge. That is awesome. You can see on the left there, you've got water temp, oil pressure, and fuel. And in general, this era of Mercedes gauge is just so timeless. You know, these will always be legible. You will always, anybody could get in here and know exactly what the car is trying to tell you. This being a later year, of course, you do have a check engine light in the bottom corner here. You would not have gotten that in an earlier year. Another neat thing I found is that this car still seems to retain its original owner's manual. You got a bunch of paperwork, so it looks like this car was indeed sold in Newport Beach, California. So that's how you know that it was well kept. So there you have it, folks. That's all there is to talk about for this particular 124. This one is being sold here by Genuine Cars in San Leandro, California. As you can see, it does need a little bit of cleaning up, but this would be a really, really great candidate for a project. It just needs a little bit of cosmetics. Mechanically, it's great. The interior on this car is truly fantastic. So I'll leave their contact info in the description. Please feel free to come check them out. Again, this is a beautiful car. Somebody needs to snatch it up, clean it up, and give it a new home. Thanks, everyone.